You are now listening to Soundspace, the podcast where we interview experts and professionals in the space of sound.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Soundspace. I am once again joined by my fantastic audio engineering co-host, Anthony Catchy. How are you?
I'm doing very good, man. Thank you. How are you?
Doing good. I'm very excited about today's guest. If you're a fan of audio engineering, guitar playing, bands, mixing, subtitles, teaching, sound design, studio life, we have a perfect guest for you. Let me please introduce to you Juan Gomez, a Uruguayan audio engineer and guitar player currently residing in Montreal, Quebec. He began his career in music by forming his band Jimbo and teaching guitar at School of Rock in Ottawa, Ontario. In 2019, he acquired a music industry arts diploma from Algonquin College, where he was a standout student from the beginning. Later that year, he became a studio assistant at Planet Studios and quickly became a client favorite because of his hard work, management, and audio skill set. He now runs multiple studio sessions at that same facility as a freelance recording and mixing engineer. Artists and studio projects he has worked on include Nikki Yanofsky, Corneille, Académie, and the TVA series En Studio. He also teaches production techniques and sound design courses at Recording Arts Canada. Lastly, he works as a sound technician at Sovo Technologies, where he engineers subtitle recordings. Let's please give a warm welcome to Juan Gomez. How's it going, Juan?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for that crazy intro. I mean, it makes it sound like I do more than I actually do.
No, he's just spitting facts.
That's all you, man.
It's you.
That's all fact. That's all research, man.
Yeah.
That's all you, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I have done all that shit. Never really saw it that way, but yeah, sounds like a long list of stuff I've done.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you look back on it and you're like, yeah, those all happened. And when you say them all together in a sentence, yeah, it is a lot. Which congratulations to you.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, I mean, when you originally invited me to do this podcast, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. It'll be fun. Like, it'll be a cool time hanging out with you. And but I was like, you had Jacob on a while back, and I was like, I feel like I haven't done as much, accomplished as much as Jacob has. So I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about, but I guess I have stories to go around.
You have plenty to talk about. Trust me, we'll probably be hitting some Jacob times here in terms of how long we go for recording. So let's start with the beginning with you. I want to know when audio and music became of interest for you.
Oh, man. I mean, I originally got into music before I got into audio for sure. Mm-hmm. I started playing guitar when I was like, I don't know, 14, 15-ish. I'd always really liked music. Like, ever since I was a kid, I would just listen to music all the time with my dad, and I would listen to CDs on my own. And I always kind of wanted to do music and never really got into it until I got my first guitar when I was 14. I remember I had gotten a bunch of money for my birthday, and I found this guitar on Kijiji, like an electric guitar.
Nice. Because
I had a classical guitar, but I never really wanted to pick it up originally. I was like, I listened to all those like Shredder guys and Iron Maiden, and I wanted to play like them, right? So I had this classical guitar, and I was like, it's kind of lame. I don't fucking want to learn that. So I found this electric guitar. I asked my parents to buy it for me. They were like, no, it's too expensive. So I found this electric guitar on Kijiji for like $100, and I just like begged my parents to drive me over to Ottawa.
Oh, man.
We went to this pawn shop in Ottawa, just bought this guitar, and I didn't know anything about guitars then. Later on, I found out that like the strings were ass, the setup was terrible, like the guitar was good itself, but like everything was just fucked.
Oh, man. Jesus.
But, yeah, I learned how to play on that piece of shit.
I mean, if you learn how to play on a piece of shit guitar, you know how to play on every guitar.
yeah, pretty much.
True.
And I guess if I can start this whole thing with like giving a tip to parents who want to buy guitars to their kids, don't buy them a classical guitar if they're into metal, because they're gonna hate it. That's gonna discourage them like real quick.
It's just not the same.
Yeah, after that, I mean, I started learning. I would like lock myself in my bedroom for like 8 hours, just play guitar nonstop instead of doing my homework. And then I started a band like a year after that. I started my band Jimbo, and I became really close friends with the owner of the studio where we record. We would rehearse. We would rehearse at Shine Studios. I became friends with the owner, Kelly.
Okay.
And he was like, look, if you guys want to record your songs, go ahead, use the studio, but I'm not going to give you an engineer. You're going to have to figure it out yourself.
That's awesome.
So I was like, bet, let's do that. Yeah, I was like, this was when I was like 17, I guess, when he told me that.
Right.
And I was like, sure, let's do it. And then I looked up YouTube videos on how to record drums, and most of my early recordings just sounded like absolute garbage, but I figured it out. He had a couple nice preamps, nothing too crazy, but a lot of like, good vintage gear that sounded pretty good. And he had a decent mic locker. So I would just like, stick those things up. I remember he had a U87 that I used on vocals. Right. And that's when I really started like getting into audio, was when I was like 17 and I started recording my band. I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, man. I really like this.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And on a personal note, when you actively started following a career in audio, did you feel discouraged by people around you, or Or did you feel like you had a strong support system by your friends and your family and so forth?
I mean, it's kind of weird because when I started doing audio, I didn't really actively start following a career in audio at first. Like, especially when I was in high school, right? Like, this what I'm saying is when I was like between the ages of like 15 to 17, when I really started playing in a band and we started playing live and I started recording, then I started mixing and stuff. I was still in high school, and back then I wanted to be like a biochemist because I really liked science.
Really?
So I was like, I never really considered I loved science.
Nice.
I still kind of do, but not as much as when I was in high school. But I was really good in math. I was really good in my science classes and all that. And I was like, I like playing guitar. I like playing in a band. It's fun. But I never really considered doing that as a career. Like, it was never really an option, really. And then when I finished high school, I went to college. I was kind of like discouraged with college. Like, it really wasn't something that I enjoyed. So then I dropped out of school. I worked for a year or two, and all this whole time I was still doing music. My mom told me, like, why don't you do music as a career? Why don't you like study something like that? Yeah. My mom was actually the one who, because she was like, she saw that like the one thing that was like, it was like a difficult time in my life when I dropped out of college. Like, I was always good in high school, and then suddenly I dropped out of school in college. I was really discouraged because I was like, well, I'm going to be a bum for the rest of my life. And my mom's realized, she was the one who realized back then that like the only thing that kept me happy and the only thing that I was doing constantly was like playing with my band, playing guitar, recording, mixing, all that shit. She's like, why don't you like do something? Like, she actually found the MIA program in Algonquin College magazine. Yeah.
Usually it's when it's supporting, it's like, oh, I support you. You want to do that. I support you to do that, but to go out of the way and just telling you should do this and finding the program for you, that's really amazing.
Oh yeah, no, like big ups to my mom for that. 100%.
Shout out to mom.
Like, she was the one who really encouraged me. Yeah, shout out to my mom, man. If you're listening to this, which you probably won't, shout out.
Who knows?
But who knows? Maybe. But anyways, yeah. So like that's kind of when I really considered music as a career. And then even then I was still like, okay, well, I'll be a musician, I'll get better at guitar, keep playing live gigs, blah, blah, blah. And I signed up for MIA because I liked the recording aspect. I was like, well, broaden my horizons. If I can play music, I can record, I can do live sound, I could like be an engineer. I'm like, I'll do that. So no one around me ever really discouraged me, but it was always kind of like, I never really talked about it too much either with anybody, like other than my mom, really.
Okay.
And then my current girlfriend.
Right.
I never really talked about like my career goals and stuff like that because I was always afraid of getting discouraged.
Okay.
Kind of. So I was always kind of afraid that like if I told someone like, yeah, I want to do music as a career, they'd be like, no. So I was like, I'd rather not tell it. So I kind of like avoided that discouragement by avoiding talking about it, I guess. But my mom was always like super on board with anything I did. And like, she would just always like make sure I was, first of all, doing something that I enjoyed. And second, like, all right, like not fucking dying of hunger.
And fear of failure is definitely a very real thing for all artists, I'd say.
Oh yeah, big time. Like to this day, like sometimes I'll still like, I'm way better than I used to be when I was younger, but to this day I'll sometimes be scared to like confront something or like try something out because I'm afraid of failing.
You shouldn't. You heard your introduction.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's definitely easier now that I have some stuff under my belt and I've done some stuff. Like it's easier to take on new challenges, and like my new job at Sovo, like I've never done, I mean, it's a lot of stuff like that is sound engineering that I'm going to do, but I've never really done anything with subtitles, any kind of stuff like that. So it's a new challenge that I'm going to take on, and it's going to be fun. But
for sure.
Absolutely. I want to bring it back to MIA because I feel like that is like the centerpiece of you jumping into Montreal and finding all these other positions. It's definitely a place where I learned a lot, and I'm sure you learned a lot. So we know why you applied to the program, but what was your experience like from a semester to semester basis? What did you learn? Because I think, weren't you like the year where the pandemic happened during or during? No. Or you were the year right before? Yeah.
Thankfully, I graduated right before the pandemic.
Yeah. Tell us about the experience in a fantastic pre-pandemic world.
Oh man, good old days before the fucking virus.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it was amazing. I'm really glad I did that. It's too bad that it costs fucking $15,000 or whatever it is, but yeah, dude, it was a great experience.
It's an investment.
I learned so much. Yeah, it was definitely an investment. I feel like it was definitely my if Shine and Jimbo and recording my band by myself, like if that was my starting point, MIA was definitely my kickoff point where I like really like honed my skills and kind of, well, not honed my skills, that was more when I was working at Planet, but that was really when I like learned the ropes and kind of felt what it was kind of like to be in a studio environment. Because one thing about that's cool about MIA with the studio in there and with the teachers that have years of experience, right? It's like,
right,
yeah, you're in a controlled environment. Like it's not the same as being in a studio, which I learned later on, but you're in a controlled environment, you're in a classroom, but you get the sense of what it's like to be in a studio. You know, I had amazing teachers, guy like Pete Gilroy, who has like years and years and years of studio under his belt as an engineer, as a producer, as a live sound guy. Like he's done shit ton of stuff. So
no, Pete is a,
you know,
beast.
a lot of times,
yeah,
dude, Pete is a fucking monster. Shout out Pete.
Yeah,
but like I learned so much from him because he would go on these weird tangents and just tell us like stories. Like through these stories, you'd learn stuff about like studio etiquette and stuff that wasn't necessarily on the curriculum, but that we'd learn anyways, right? And then you know, learning how the SSL works, learning the signal flow, learning how to patch a mic, learning the differences between mics. Like I already knew, like before MIA, I already knew what like a dynamic was, a condenser, a ribbon mic. Like I knew the difference between mics, but I didn't really know much about it. So like getting, you know, like I said earlier, I was always a fan of like science and getting to know like the science behind the audio, the science behind how, you know, the ribbon on a ribbon mic works, how a condenser microphone works, why a condenser needs 48 volts, like all that kind of shit, learning really like the ins and outs of that kind of stuff. And then obviously all the other classes, like, you know, music business, learning about the music business, how it works. Like I didn't know what a fucking grant was before, right, you know, MIA, like what factor was, what all the different stuff that you don't even realize exists in the music
for sure. And it's super essential. Right? So like, yeah, it's one thing like working in audio or making music, but once you make it, once you do it, you need to find a way to get income from it, get something, get rewarded.
Yeah, exactly. And you need to find a way to like, you know, to make it your livelihood if that's what you want, right? Because like, no, exactly. It's because like, and there's so many different ways of doing it. You just got to get creative and you have to, you know, not be scared of going out there and getting that bread, bro.
And knowing your worth.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting that bread is the best way to say it, I think. Yeah. I really wanted to know, I did the program back in 2014, 2015. I feel like it was still in its infancy. I was the first year with the SSL console in the N108.
Oh yeah.
What did this is kind of on a sidebar. What did working with like really professional like outboard gear in a console like that? How did it prepare you? Like specifically the gear, like having access to that on a weekly basis and like the recording projects and everything and being able to use it. Like how did that set you up for where you're at right now?
That's a great question. I mean, if there's one thing I can kind of criticize MIA for, unfortunately, is that like a lot of the outboard gear we didn't really touch that much. So it's not necessarily that we didn't touch, but like, you know, we learned like the basics of compression and then we learned how an LA2A works and how an 1176 works, right? But like we never really did much about like what a vocal sounds through an LA2A versus what a vocal sounds through an 1176 versus what a vocal sounds through a 1073 versus whatever, right? Thankfully, because we had that gear and I was just naturally curious and I knew a bunch of it was just like classic gear, I would just in my own time, like my own studio time, I would patch through it and
familiarize,
use the APIs and then use the 1073. Yeah, exactly. And like compare those with like the compressors on the SSL itself or the mic pre's on the SSL itself, like that kind of shit. And I just go through all that and just kind of get used to it. So I feel like what that really helped with, honestly, I think what I really got from MIA that helped me work in a professional studio was the signal flow. Like above all else, just how to get from the mic to Pro Tools and everything in between and how a patch bay works and how the SSL channel strip works, right? Like one channel strip is like you have the mic pre and the difference between mic and line. And obviously the SSL that we had at Planet was a bit different. So I had to relearn the signal flow specifically for that console. But once you have the basics of signal flow and you know how it works, like how on an SSL patch bay, the inputs are at the bottom, the outputs are at the top. So like just knowing that kind of shit definitely gave me a bit of an edge once I started working in a commercial studio because I already knew that kind of shit. So I didn't have to relearn everything from scratch. I just had to take the basics of what I already knew and apply it to the signal flow of Planet Studio specifically. So that's like the biggest advantage I got from going to MIA was just already knowing that kind of stuff, already having spent a whole year in a controlled environment without all the stress of running a session of, you know, being a studio assistant, learning those basics and then applying it to the real life.
Right.
Definitely.
So I was curious, like we talked about a little bit about gear you talked about microphones and pre's that you used. What DAWs did you start working on when you started, and which ones are you working in now?
Damn. Well, back in the day when I would work at Shine, I was working on Cubase.
Oh,
Cubase 6,
no way.
I think it was back in those days. Yeah, Cubase is amazing, man. And I still buy it like every 2 years. Like I buy like the new version or something if it has something cool. And dude, Cubase is amazing. Like if it weren't for the fact that most studios use Pro Tools, I'd still be on Cubase.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because Cubase just has so much functionality. Like you can do pretty much everything you can do in Pro Tools, you can do in Cubase, and then some. So like the MIDI functionalities are easier, virtual instruments. So it's kind of like a cool middle ground between like a recording DAW and a composing DAW. A lot of people, it's very popular in Europe for like scoring and stuff like that, right? So when I started doing audio, I was like exclusively in Cubase. It's the DAW that I learned. It's the DAW that I got used to.
Okay.
It's the DAW that I mixed the first EP on because we had a copy at the studio, and then I bought myself a copy of Cubase Elements, which is like the cheapest one, and in retrospect kind of sucks because you don't have a lot of functionality. And then I mean, because of MIA, obviously, I started. Wow, no, actually, the first DAW I ever used was actually Ableton Live.
Okay.
Because before I actually even started doing audio, there was a time where I would do guitar covers on YouTube.
Nice.
And
the good old days.
Those guitar covers I would record with literally like through my amp had like a USB thing to plug into the computer. I knew nothing about audio back then.
Okay.
And my amp had come with a free copy of Ableton, right? So I would just plug the USB into Ableton and then download instrumentals of songs off of YouTube, like YouTube to MP3, whatever. And then just do a guitar cover on Ableton. Like it was totally ass. So that's like the only experience I ever had with Ableton because I would never pretend like I actually know how to use it. But yeah, so Cubase was my main DAW for like the first 2 years, I guess. Then when I got into MIA, I mean, it was Pro Tools only because it's the industry standard.
Right.
So I started using Pro Tools. I learned the ins and outs of Pro Tools. I got used to it. At first, I didn't really like it, but I mean, once you get used to it, Pro Tools is pretty cool. And then, of course, when I started working at Planet, what we used was Pro Tools once again because it's the industry standard. So I've just kind of been with Pro Tools ever since. Like I said, I still buy Cubase every year.
So you still work in it from time to time, or it's just...
Sometimes, yeah, because it has cool, like, for example, I don't have vocal line because vocal line's super expensive.
Okay.
But Cubase has a built-in vocal line function. Like you can just built into the DAW, you can just align 2 tracks. So whenever I need to align, say, acoustic guitars or vocals, whatever, I'll just export them from Pro Tools, import them to Cubase and do that. Or if I'm composing, a lot of times I'll use Cubase just because I feel like the MIDI functionality in Pro Tools is absolute garbage.
Right.
Yeah, no, I hate the MIDI in Pro Tools. That's like the biggest critique.
Yeah, MIDI
I
in Pro
have
Tools
of
is the worst.
I do my
100%.
MIDI in Reaper just because like I just got used to the MIDI in Reaper. But
Okay.
Pro Tools is great for post, great for mixing, great for tracking. But like in the MIDI, it just feels clunky and slow, and I'm clicking
And
on stuff
old.
and it's not doing what I need it to do when I need it. You know, it's just it's never reaching like the goals.
I've tried
100%.
it.
Whenever I do,
Yeah, I've tried it, but for me, it's Logic. I do MIDI in Logic.
Logic is great for MIDI.
My favorite.
yeah, whenever I end up doing anything MIDI in Pro Tools, I feel like I'm back in like 2004 with how old the fucking UI is. Like it's just terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's my main DAW now. Like every mix I do is in Pro Tools. Every time I run a session, it's in Pro Tools. Recently, I've gotten a lot into Reason because I'm teaching sound design at RAC. We use a lot of Reason. I always kind of knew how to use it because I've dabbled with it in the past, and Kevin and MIA kind of taught us how it works and stuff like that. But now I've really gotten into it, and dude, the user interface absolutely sucks. It's terrible, but the instruments that you can get in Reason are just insane.
I know,
especially considering that they're like stock instruments. They're like, dude,
Right.
I've never seen a DAW with as good stock instruments than Reason.
Reason has great stock instruments, and I love how you can like just plug anything together. It's very Max MSP like to me. Max MSP is something we use a lot in electroacoustic studies. It's like an audio music coding language, and with its own software, and you like use objects to create virtual instruments, and we had a whole class on it.
Yeah.
But I really love how you can like just stack things and plug things together in Reason, and then you just get these weird like sawtooths or like just ambient pads, and you can just go all over the place with it so easily. Mm-hmm. It feels limitless.
Well, yeah, I never heard about Maximus P, but yeah, I mean, Reason is just and the analog aspect of Reason is also pretty cool. How you like flip it over and you have the rack and you drag the cables over. Like as an audio engineer, like I kind of appreciate that aspect of it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, you're like, this is my patch bay. There it is.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, here's my patch bay. I just patch everything together.
Exactly. I think the patch bay talk is a great transition. I want to get into everything that's Planet Studios here. I really want to like do the whole storyline with you and like one question, and like let's really take our time, like step by step. I want to know, how did you hear about it? You know, how did you even like get your foot in the door? And then talk to us about your transition, because you had a very fast transition in like a very short amount of time. You started out as an intern, and then you became an assistant very quickly, and then you became the house engineer, and now you're a freelance engineer. You know what I mean? Like you climbed the staircase extremely quickly and very effortlessly, it feels like to me. I always saw you I would walk in, because Juan and I were assistants at the same time, so I was there for that period of time in that studio. But after I left, like I felt like you just sprinted up the stairs. You just did so good so fast. So let's talk about really how you got your foot in the door, and then like the different phases from intern to assistant to house engineer to freelance engineer. I really want to hear the storyline of this.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in 1 year, because it was pretty much a year between the time that I got into Planet and the time that I ended up leaving.
Yeah.
I started like beginning of September 2020, and I left around August of this year. So like mid to late August. So yeah, pretty much almost a year. I mean, it was cool. It was I can't attribute my jumping the stairs like that just to myself, because I also got really, really lucky. Definitely, if I hadn't had the skills that I do have, I wouldn't have been able to do it as quickly as I did and kind of adapt. So I will give myself that credit there. But
yeah, you deserve it.
Yeah, no, I got really lucky. So in general, just how I got to Planet, I mean, I had never really heard of the studio beforehand. I mean, I guess kind of, because when I decided I was going to move to Montreal from Gatineau, I looked up like Montreal recording studios, and I think Planet, if you look up Montreal recording studio, Planet,
It's probably one of the first ones to pop up.
It's the first one.
Like
it's the first one.
Is it actually the first? Okay.
Yeah. So like I remember looking up recording studios, because I remember when so basically how I got the job was Jacob posted in the MIA alumni group like, hey, Planet Studios is looking for assistants. I was like, oh, I kind of, Planet Studios kind of rings a bell. And so I had Googled it. Like when I Googled recording studios, I'd definitely seen Planet Studios beforehand. So I looked up Planet Studios. I saw the pictures, you know, like everyone does with all the gear, the SSL, all that kind of shit.
Right.
And so I looked that up, and basically I texted Jacob. I'm like, hey, this was like in like May of last year, right before the studio reopened the first time. I was like, hey, I'm moving to Montreal in September. Like, let me know if you still need people then. But I think you also answered that post yourself, Jaian. Eh? Wasn't that how you got the job?
That is the exact post I answered.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah,
that's how I got.
I texted Jacob. I was like, hey man, you know, I told him. He's like, okay, hit me up when you like in September when you finally move here, and if we still need people, I'll let you know. So in September, I hit him up. I went to the studio, met him, and then the next day I just kind of started as an intern. Which, I mean, being an intern at Planet, you know how it is, Jaian. Like it's a lot of hard work, and it's not the most glamorous job ever. But if you like that kind of shit, it's definitely fun, especially when you first start out, right? Like you get into this.
It's like studio boot camp is the way to say it. Like 100%. You're just in there and you're learning, and you walk out of there and you're like, how did I get through that? And you do it over and over and over, and you just like grow. I became a man. I'll say it like that.
Me too,
personally. But yeah.
I mean,
okay. And when you were when you were an intern, what were your tasks like? Because you know what you asked me. Oh, you know what it's like, but what is it like? How would you describe it?
You're basically everybody's bitch. Like. You're like, I mean, you're the head assistant's bitch. You're the other assistant's bitch. I mean, I was your bitch. You're the client's bitch. You're the tenant's bitch. You're just everybody's bitch. You just kind of have to do whatever they say. And like, I mean, obviously I'm exaggerating right now. It's not like you're everybody's bitch there, but I mean, you're just serving, like when you're an intern, you're like in the studio, but you're not really doing any studio stuff. You're serving coffees. You're, first of all, you have to learn how to serve the coffees. I remember one of the first things Jacob said to me was, if I can't trust you to make a coffee right, I can't trust you to do anything else. So basically that's what it was for most of the time. It was just,
same thing. Yeah. And he would critique my coffees as I made them. He's like, oh, this one's a little bit better from yesterday. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So it was all stuff like that. And, so you mop the floor, you sweep, you change the garbages. And then once you're done cleaning, if you're lucky, you get to sit down in a session and just observe the engineer. And then like around the beginning, like depending on on what you know how to do. Like, because I did MIA, I knew how to wrap cables, I knew how to run mics, I knew how to do that kind of shit. So I would sit down in a session with Jacob, and then when Jacob was done the session, I'd like wrap the cables with him, I'd put them away, I'd help him set up, like whenever he was miking a drum kit, I'd help him set that up. I'd, you know, run around, get stuff. Once you learn where the stuff is as an intern, like after a few days that you're there, after a week or so, you know, once you know where the mics are, you run around, pick up mics, do dishes. Like it's all the like fetch stuff. It's the, you know, going to buy water, going to buy milk, going to buy all this stuff. So all the little like fetch stuff that you do, that the engineer either doesn't have time or doesn't feel like doing. It's kind of
it's the natural first step.
Pretty much, yeah. It's
in a job like this. In a place like this,
it's just it's all, like I said, the bitch stuff, right? Like it's the running around, wrapping cables and making coffees, and then at the end of the day, you sweep, you mop, you brush the toilet, and then you go home and sleep 4 hours if you're lucky.
So that was the natural first step. When did you make the jump from an intern to a studio assistant?
It was fairly quickly, probably about not even a month after I got there. So around October, I guess. So like assisting, I started doing my own sessions. I was assisting Dan, you know, I was recalling his mixes, because when you do an analog mix, you have to recall it. It's not like a Pro Tools session that you just open and everything's ready. So recalling his mixes, all that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of the tasks were the same as an intern than they are as an assistant, and even head engineer. Like a lot of times, Jacob was also cleaning, was also doing a lot of this shit. So like a lot of the tasks didn't really change at all. I just kind of got more responsibilities. I was able to run my own sessions, like vocal sessions. My first vocal session I ran was completely by accident, because I remember Jaian already had a session upstairs that he had been there since like 7 a.m. It was on a Saturday too. I got in there at like noon. And Jacob had a session at 1 p.m. and this guy was just chilling at the coffee table. He's like, yeah, I was supposed to have a session at noon. And Jacob was just like, well, you do it in Red Room, which was like the extra room that we used to have.
The rapper room.
The rapper room, exactly. We used to call it the rapper room, because we just always had a mic set up there for vocals. So every time we had like a random rapper or whatever.
It was just 2-track rappers in there all the time. Just 2-track rappers.
It's just easier to just go in there and just, because you just had to open Pro Tools and you were ready to record.
It's a simple setup, I imagine.
Yeah, it was the easiest setup in there.
Yeah, so, you got a one knob and it was all digital. There was no like, there was analog gear that we never really used, but it was all like Apollo based. So you just open it up, open Pro Tools, do the headphone sends, and just record. So like whenever it was just like an hour or 2 hour rapper, instead of using one of the big studios and setting up all the mics and doing all the patching and all that, which would take like, you know, once you got good at it, it only took like 10-15 minutes to set up a vocal setup. But even then, like the vocal setup in Rapper Room was already ready. So like why waste time and just do it in there, right? So that was my first session, and that's kind of when I 100%. Jumped over to assistant, right? And then when Jaian came back, we were like both kind of assisting with Jacob being the head guy. I mean, we went through another intern at that point too, which didn't end up very, very well, unfortunately. But you know, it was Jacob as the head guy, and then me and Jaian as assistants, and we were kind of like, you know, flip-flopping sessions. Jaian would do one, I would do another, that kind of stuff, you know, sharing. Juan, I want to pause you, because you just put your finger on something I was going to ask, and I feel like it's the perfect point to ask this question.
Okay.
It's still very much intern based and everything, and then we'll continue on like everything else, but like you put your finger on something that it's like super important for me to hit. We mentioned an intern that like you saw come and go. I want you to talk about, because I feel like a lot of our listeners are people who listen to this episode are going to be people who want to know more about what it's like being in the studio and everything in that environment. So you've been at that studio for over a year now, considering that you're still freelancing for it. As someone who has seen multiple studio assistants and interns come and go at Planet, what would you say are like the essential skills, like the most important ones to be successful in a studio environment? Because I think like that's super important to talk about.
Oh man, so many different skills. I mean, there's a lot of the skills that are like specific to Planet because of the way that Planet runs and because of the like the fact that it's like one of the only big studios in Montreal. But I mean, for sure, the first thing you need to know if you're like trying to be a studio assistant or a studio intern is just like you're like at the very bottom of the totem pole at all times. The person in charge of the session is always going to be the artist or the producer. 100% of the time is always they're going to be the boss, and you have to kind of give in to their every whim. Obviously there's limits, but you know what I mean. Like it's just kind of, if they want a certain mic, if they want to move the drum kit, if they want to do whatever, like you have to listen to them. So it's about keeping that kind of attitude, being obviously respectful. Because like if anyone, one thing that I always say, and I say this to my students too, is if you ever worked a customer service job where you always have to be nice to the client, even if he's an asshole, where you always have to like keep a smile on your face. You have to
The worst.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like that. And I mean, in the studio life isn't like, it's a little bit, in terms of customer service, it's actually a little bit easier than that, because most people that I saw at Planet, like I'd say probably 99% of the clients that we had were mostly nice towards neutral. Like you don't get many Karens, or at least not as many as you would at like when I was working at Starbucks. But
Right.
regardless, you still have to keep that that good customer service face, that customer service voice. You know, one thing that I was actually talking about this with Dan last week, was just like, Dan being the owner of Planet Studios, just in case, was just that, like, you know, if you're gonna be in that position, you just have to kind of want it. Like you really have to want it. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of hard hours, like a lot long hours, hard work, not a lot of sleep sometimes, especially if you don't live close by. And
For sure.
mainly
Often.
you just gotta, often. Yeah. I mean, you and I know the struggle. You lived further than me too, so it was worse for you, but
Yeah, bro.
yeah, it's a struggle, man. And you just have to be a people person. If you're not a people person, you're not going to work out in the studio environment at all.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that, like on the customer service kind of thing. Because though I never worked in a studio, I've DJ'd, I've done private events and stuff. You have to make the client happy, basically. You have to do what they want. They're the one paying you.
It's the customer's always right kind of thing, you know. Like it's like they're not always right, but you kind of have to. And like I said, it's actually easier. Like the customer service in a studio environment is actually a bit easier because it's such a niche clientele. Like in Starbucks or at a grocery store, you get everybody, because at a certain point, everybody needs to go to a grocery store. Everybody needs to go to somewhere, right? Whereas in a recording studio, you don't get everybody. It's really just, you only get musicians, producers, and other engineers, or, you know, TV productions, people who want to do voiceover. So it's really like a specific clientele, people who want to record stuff. And on top of that, the music industry, just in general, is such a small world, especially in Quebec, especially in Montreal. Everybody knows everybody. So if as a musician, you're an asshole and you go to the studio and you act like an asshole and you act like a Karen, then
You're marked.
yeah, everybody's going to know. Nobody's going to want to work
You're
with you.
blacklisted for sure.
So from the point of view of a studio assistant, from a studio intern point of view, you don't get that many people like that, because they know that if they act like that with you, everybody's going to find out eventually. So even though in that moment you might have to be like this, the customer's always right and blah, 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 they're most likely not going to act like that.
Right.
So.
Right, but Juan, I have to actually, this is interesting. I have to respectfully disagree in the sense that, like, I've seen and you've seen people, like you're describing what you need to do, and I agree with that. But it's not everyone that has that switch. Like we've seen people at that studio come in and not follow through on what you're doing, you know, and it would seem very obvious, you know. It would seem like something you have to do if you want to be successful. But it feels like some people don't have that switch sometimes, where they'll say something in a session, or they'll not be correct, like they won't hit the social cues and stuff like that. And I just feel like, I don't know, what would you say are the social cues? Like I want to like get into the specifics of that, because I feel like if I've seen it multiple times happen, it's because like maybe there's something we can say out there to help those types of people. You know what I mean?
If we're talking about like stuff that you should specifically do in a studio to like make it work out, first of all, shut the fuck up. There's no nicer way to say it, honestly. If you're in a session, unless someone specifically asks you a question, you stay silent, you don't say anything. And I've seen this multiple times with assistants where it hasn't worked out, and with assistants who eventually have learned. Like obviously I'm not going to name names here, but the only one person I will mention is my buddy James. When he started, he was obviously really excited to be in a big commercial studio, and he would, you know, talk, and he's an excellent producer. Shout out Jimmy. Crazy producer. His music is insane. But when he started, he would like get a little bit too excited, and he would immediately talk about his beats. So one time I told him, I'm like, hey dude, look, just like, you know, maybe chill out, calm down a bit on this. And after that he did, and he stayed for multiple months after. I
had the same issue. I did the same thing. Jacob, like the first day I was there, I was like super excited. I was like talking about like film music I was working on, because I was still in that program. And then like the next day, Jacob pulls me aside. He's like, listen, I really appreciate the energy, but like, if there's a group of rappers in there and you're acting like that, it's just gonna throw off the vibe. You got to watch that. And I was like, oh, okay, I see what you mean now. And like, it started falling into place. So
100%. And that's like the second most important point is like, it's good to be excited. It's good to be like, especially when you just get in. I mean, I walked in there, fucking see all these Neve preamps, see all like the 2 consoles, like everything. I'm like, holy shit, this is amazing. So you're excited. But if someone tells you something that they're telling you so you can improve, right? They're telling you this so you can be a better intern. You have to take it and run with it. You can't just like, basically, I think the most important, like the conclusion to all of this is like, as a studio intern, you can't just do whatever the fuck you feel like. You have to like follow studio etiquette. And that includes, like I said, not speaking unless being spoken to, doing what the client asks you to do. You're running coffees, you're, doing what the engineer, the other assistant asks you to do, like helping out, all that. That's really the most important part, is following studio etiquette. And like, I was going to say, it's funny because I was going to say it's a lot of the stuff is common sense, but now that you mention it, Jaian, it's actually not that common. A lot of people have a hard time with
exactly.
it. And I have seen it multiple times where it hasn't worked out, unfortunately. And, because some people enter with either a certain arrogance or a certain...
Arrogance is a big one.
Yeah, arrogance for sure.
I've seen that.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that.
It's ugly.
Yeah, being arrogant in this industry is not going to get you very far.
Yeah, because first of all, you don't know everything,
Yeah, exactly. It's impossible to know everything. You're still learning. I mean, engineers who've been doing this for 40 years will tell you they're still
constantly learning. Yeah, and once you know everything, there's new technology coming up and new gear, new software to learn. So no, you can't be arrogant. I mean, just in general, I believe in life you shouldn't be an arrogant person, but you definitely can't be arrogant in the audio environment, in the studio environment, that kind of stuff. You can't be an arrogant person. It's just not going to work out. But yeah, I mean, those are the most important parts, I think. Just like knowing your place, knowing your role, staying silent, and not being arrogant. Just being actually, you know what? The other very important thing that I'm going to mention is always observe everything. Always listen. Always pay attention. Always just like, whether it be audio related, so always watch what the engineer is doing, because sometimes you'll learn something just by watching them. And you'll be like, wow, like I never thought I could do that, or like, for example, one of the things that I learned from Dan and Jacob, which I know Jacob learned this from Dan directly as well, is how to get a killer bass tone just with a DI, like running it through an LA, like a preamp, and then into an LA2A, into a Pultec, and then like boosting the low end, that kind of stuff that like now whenever I'm either recording or mixing bass, I do it every single time. That I learned just by watching them do it. And by listening to the amazing like bass tones that they were getting, I'm like, wow, so that's kind of like biggest tip is like, just pay attention to everything, and then always pay attention to everything the client's doing. Because if the client looks like they needed a second pair of headphones, if it looks like they need a chair, if it looks like they need a music stand, if it looks like they need a coffee, if they just mention, oh shit, I'm thirsty or whatever, like, oh, it's hot in here, whatever. Yeah.
Before they ask for anything, you should be able to bring what they already need. And if you're able to do that just by observing and always paying attention, you're going to look like the best assistant in the world, because before like you read their mind, right? Like before they even say anything, you already have that there, right? So those are definitely the main tips I would give to anyone who wants to be a studio intern or a studio assistant, is to just observe everything and then know your role, follow studio etiquette, don't talk.
Be observant and don't be an asshole.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
So we talked about your studio assistant post. Can you describe to us the jump from studio assistant to main house engineer, and then from that to freelance engineer?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, the jump from studio assistant to main house engineer was probably the hardest one. And being the main engineer, if I'm being honest, was probably the most difficult job out of all of them.
I bet.
Even harder than being an intern. Even though I was doing, I was getting paid, I was doing all that I wanted to do, that I really like to do. I don't think I realized necessarily all of the responsibilities that came with that position. Mainly because Jacob was just really good at doing it when I was there. And
Jacob made it look so easy.
Jacob made it look very easy.
Yeah, insane.
Yeah. No, it was like, I mean, there's also
Jacob's
the fact that he was there for a long time. Yeah, he was there for about 5 years before he went freelance. So obviously he had all the experience. experience. He knew exactly all that kind of shit. So, I feel like I did a fairly good job of taking over his place. So like obviously with a lot of hiccups, and thankfully I had a shit ton of help from Simon and James. Once again, shout out to both of them. It was a great time. I mean, I had a bunch of laughs with those two guys over the summer, and just amazing times at the studio. Obviously, we had hard times when it was busy and, all that kind of shit. But, being house engineer, the jump from assistant to house engineer is really coordinating everything, I think, was the biggest difference. Making sure that, like, coordinating the other assistants' schedules, making sure that, everybody's on the right session, everybody's, like, taking care of what they have to. You give everyone responsibilities, and you have to make sure that they're following it. You're basically manager, right? Like, you're the studio manager. And then just doing sessions back to back to back. Because as an intern, like, because you're not really getting paid as an unpaid intern, you're not really stuck to a schedule, really.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it looks bad if you don't come in for like the weekend or whatever. Like you kind of, like I said earlier, you kind of have to want it. So you still have to do the long hours. You still have to do, I mean, you don't have to, nothing's forcing you, but
you got to show you care.
If you want to make it, you have to show you care as an intern. But as a studio manager, you're kind of obligated to be there, like for a long time, to make sure everything's running smoothly, to make sure the clients are happy, to make sure everything's going okay. Because if something goes wrong, it's on you. Right. And you're the person responsible for everything. Right. So that's like the most difficult part of it is really that. But I've just been kind of saying the negatives. Honestly, being the head engineer was a fucking great time because
for sure
I got to do all of the best sessions. Like, because like as an assistant, what you mostly do is like little shitty rapper sessions and like little like vocals and stuff like that, which like some of the sessions can be really cool still. But once you get to that main position, I was doing a lot of jazz bands and like big setups and stuff like that, where I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like a lot of the stuff that I was doing was mostly like the big sessions and working with the big names, like the guys like Corneille and all that. All of those things was like amazing. It was the best part. And then jumping from from just engineer at Planet to freelance, that's like the scariest jump, I think, because as a freelance engineer, there's never any guarantee of having work. That's like the most important.
Yeah, that's the thing about freelance. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Like
it's never consistent.
Yeah, and being at Planet, I mean, technically we were still self-employed, so on paper we were still freelance, right? But we were getting like all the sessions that Planet was giving us, we were getting it. So if you were at the studio, you were almost guaranteed to have work, especially on a busy week. Like you were gonna work, you knew you were gonna get paid, you knew you were gonna like have that work in your, like, have that money in your pocket at the end of the day. So even though you're still dependent on if the client's book or not, you still know that if the studio is booked, you're going to work. So that's the advantage of it. So once you go freelance, it's your responsibility to go and like kind of find your clients. Hopefully, if you've built a nice client base from being at Planet, you get enough gigs to keep you busy. I mean, like I said, Jacob was there for a long time, so he had a lot of clients when he left. So he's been keeping busy. I hadn't been there as long, so I still had my clients. I met a bunch of people, and thankfully, other people would refer me, like to some clients would refer me to other clients. So I still get calls. I still get people who call me directly to do sessions.
Of getting clients. Actually, it's just
word of mouth. Yeah, word of mouth. So like it was, it definitely helped me out, and I've done quite a bit of sessions since I left, and because I left on good terms with Dan, he still calls me whenever he needs like an extra hand or someone with a bit more experience to kind of come in and run sessions or assist on something, when he's when the schedule's kind of tight for them, or when the assistants there have had like really long days and they're tired, like he'll call me in for like, hey man, can you come give a hand with this session, every once in a while. So yeah, it's cool. Like it's definitely a lot less pressure to be freelance because you don't have to take care of the studio as much. I mean, you're not there every day, so you don't have to you don't have that responsibility of everything that goes right or everything that goes wrong is on your head. But you do have the pressure of, well, am I going to get enough gigs this week? Am I going to get enough gigs this month? Am I going to, do I have to, promote myself? That kind of shit. So it's a balance, and it's important to keep that balance.
Yeah, it's a total balance. I know what you mean. Like this year, 2021, has been a year of balancing the whole time. It's like, it was my very first year. Because when I feel like when we were like at Planet in 2020, which is kind of like, sessions are coming in. Just do them. Just say yes to as many and just do them and be here all the time. And once we both left, it was kind of like, okay, whatever comes my way, I'll just like grab that and then try to find another one and hop and hop and hop and hop and hop. And getting used to that flow of being a freelancer is a whole other ball game.
It's it's a whole different world, man. It's just like, because like when we were at Planet, we just get the notification, oh, Dan booked a session. Are you going to do it? Do you want me to do it? Are you available this night? Oh no, tonight you have plans. Okay, I'll do it. But as a freelance, you're like, okay, no session today, no session tomorrow. Client calls me up, hey, do you have an hour tomorrow afternoon to book? Yeah, I have an hour. I need money, I'll do it. It's not that bad. I mean, it's obviously not like I get enough sessions, thankfully, to like, you know, pay the bills and all that. And I'm getting more and more, which is cool.
Nice.
Building my client,
which is
building my client base, you know, people who refer me to other clients. And I've had the chance to work in a bunch of different studios, a bunch of different rooms, which is cool. And, you know, work from home. I've had a chance to work at
that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, small places like home studios and stuff like that for people that I know, like little clients, stuff like that. But you know, it's cool because you get to hear different rooms, see what the vibe is like. Because up till now, most of the time I've just been in Planet, right? But you know, working in other little studios, even if it's like a bedroom studio, stuff like that, or working from home, you know, I've had a chance to get my setup at home sounding good because I do a lot of mixing from home. So
okay.
It's practical to have a good sounding room at home.
I'm really curious. Earlier when you were talking about studio assistant, you said you received a lot of help like from others. And what's the stigma, or is there a stigma to asking for help in a studio situation?
Not really. It depends on the kind of help and what the context is when you're asking for help. So what I mean by that is if you're still new, you don't know a lot of the stuff, blah, 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 it's like it's normal to ask for help, and it's more encouraged to ask for help
it's encouraged.
than it is.
Okay.
Yeah, well, you're definitely encouraged to ask for help than to crash and burn, right? However, if it's something that like, you know, you've already gone through a bunch of times, or that like you should kind of know, I mean, it's hard. It's definitely a fine line between asking for help in a proper situation versus like maybe asking a question that you probably shouldn't be asking because you should probably know. Like if an assistant has been there for like 2 months and then he asked me, how do I create a new track in Pro Tools? Like, I'm going to be like, you know, it's an extreme example, but like, dude,
I understand.
And it also depends on like, is it the first time you asked this question? Did you already know? Did you like, you know, if you've been here for 2 months and you say like, oh, what's a 1073? Like, man, by this point you should know, right? Because there's moments where like, you know, when it was dead at the studio, right? There wasn't any sessions. I'd be like, okay, Jacob, take me through this patch bay. I want to know how it works. I want to know what. So that's what you're supposed to do, right? Because the studio is dead. There's nothing happening. So like, okay, I'm learning. I'm like actively trying to get better at this job. If you're in the middle of a big session and then the engineer asks you, hey, can you patch me, I don't know, can you patch me this plate reverb? And you're like, fuck, I don't know how to do that. You're just like, oh, okay. I mean, it has happened, and it depends on how long you've been there and how much you've had time to learn, because assistants, and I've seen assistants who started when it's been really busy, unfortunately, have a harder time learning because you don't really have that downtime where you can just sit and learn the patch bay, right? Yeah. So it's definitely encouraged to ask for help rather than like just fuck it up and look bad in front of the client, for sure. But you got to know, like, if there's a lot of downtime and there's not a lot to do, those are the moments you should be asking questions, and those are the moments you should be asking for help. And when you're an intern and you're not really doing anything, you're just sitting and observing, you should be writing notes. You should be like watching what the engineer does and then ask questions after. Just be like, hey, like I saw you do this. I saw you patch this. What did you do there? And you ask questions. And that's how you learn, because then when you're in that situation, you shouldn't have to ask the question. You already saw someone do it, right?
I guess you could say intern is like paid education.
Pretty much. I mean...
Assistant is paid education. Intern is just
observe. Intern's really just observing. Yeah. You don't really get paid as an intern.
No.
But it's really... like... How can I describe it? Like, you should really know when the time comes to ask a question, and it's up to you to like learn as much as possible. So when you're in a situation where you need to do whatever you need to do, you already know, right? Because nobody can know everything, obviously, and there's going to be situations that you never seen. I mean, to this day, there's like sometimes I do a session and like someone asks me to do something, I'm like, huh. And I kind of have to figure out. Now, once you get to a certain point where you understand the signal flow, you understand how to patch stuff, you can kind of figure it out just by looking, so you don't have to ask anybody. But, you know, first time someone asked me to patch a reverb, I'm like, I'm going to ask Jacob how this works, because I'm not 100% sure, right? So that kind of shit. Or like I said, once again, when it's dead, you go like, okay, how does this patch bay works? Where is each of these things? And you go in, you check, you look it up. You're like, okay, cool. Now I understand. Whenever I have to do it in my own session, I'm going to be able to do it without problem. So asking for help is good. You got to know when.
You got to know when. All right. Yeah, for sure. That makes sense.
Definitely. Let's go to the next question. I wanted to ask you, and this is more on a personal note. What was your highest point at the studio, and what was the lowest point? Right? Like, I want to do a big contrast between those two, and then like, what did you learn from those two experiences? Like, if you had a big moment where you like felt like really good about yourself, like, yes, I know that this formula works, and then like a huge mistake that you did, you're like, oh, never, ever, under any circumstance, ever do that again. Like the two extremes of it, really.
That's an excellent question. I mean, I definitely say my highest point was probably the first band that I recorded by myself. Just, set up the mics. I got the drums sounding amazing. I got everything sounding really good, blah, blah, blah. Like, I was pretty proud of that for sure because everything went flawless. And I don't even remember which band I've done so many sessions at Planet. I can't even say which band it was. I can't even say, like, it was somewhere around May or June. But I remember just setting up all the mics, having everything ready. Nothing went wrong. Everything was like perfect, like how it's supposed to be. No mics died, no gear died, nothing, no weird sounds, nothing like weird. The Neve was working like fucking flawlessly. Everything was sounding amazing. My rough mix sounded great at the end. Like that was the first time where I did a whole session, and I think it was like a few hours, like probably 5 or 6 hours. I did the whole session. I was like, wow, man, like that was kick ass. Like that was how every session is supposed to be. That's how that session went, right?
Nice.
And then my lowest point was probably near the end. By the time I left, I was having a pretty difficult time personally, I guess. A lot of anxiety, a lot of stuff, and then I was kind of neglecting my responsibilities as head engineer. So not necessarily keeping the place as clean as I should have, that kind of stuff. So that's probably my lowest point at the studio, when I was just kind of like keeping everything by the wayside and not taking care of it as I should have. I definitely felt, and it definitely didn't help with my anxiety because I definitely felt like I was neglecting my responsibilities. So that's probably one of the things that kind of made me leave. I mean, I was under a lot of pressure and a lot of, for multiple different reasons, both personally and studio. So I wasn't doing my job as well as I should have. So yeah, that's probably like my lowest point at the studio was probably around that time when, like right before I left.
Right.
And I guess what I really learned from those two experiences, I mean, from the first one, definitely that all the preparation stuff that we get drilled in when you start working at the studio, and all the stuff that like Dan always puts an emphasis on, like preparing the mics beforehand, scratch tests, testing the headphones, all that kind of shit that actually really, really makes a difference. Like it's really important to do that stuff ahead of time and to make sure everything's rolling, everything's good by the time your session starts, because that's really what's going to make that session go smoothly. That's really what I learned from that experience. And then from the second one, I think, and this will probably be a tip to everybody as well, no matter how busy you are, no matter what you have to do, I think it's important to always focus on staying healthy and taking care of yourself, because as soon as your own health, your own mental health, your own like physical health, whatever, starts degrading, then your professional life is going to start getting worse as well.
Absolutely.
Right?
Mental health first, personal.
Because really what happened to me was because of all the pressure that I was under, and because of, stuff that were my responsibility, stuff that were out of my own control, stuff that were like caused by external factors, external like other people.
Sure.
My work at the studio was getting worse, and I, unfortunately, I wasn't doing as good as a job as I knew I could have. And that's why I decided to leave. I was like, I need to take a break from this, get my mental health back together, and see where that goes. And that's kind of what got me into doing freelance as well, because now, like I said earlier, I don't have all that pressure, all that responsibility. I still have the pressure of I have to find clients, I have to find sessions, I have to find gigs, but it's a different kind of pressure. I'm able to take care of my own mental health. I'm able to take care of my health. I'm working out. Yeah, exactly. I'm working out. I'm doing stuff.
Absolutely.
So I feel like I'm more successful now because I'm able to take care of myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Sometimes in order to step forward, you need to like kind of just like take a breath.
Yeah,
step
take
back.
a little breather and avoid burning out.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people need that right now, especially with what's going on with the pandemic.
Yeah, 100%.
And has the pandemic affected you in any way, like throughout your studio? Like, how have your experiences and environment changed over the course of the pandemic, like through each wave? And how did the rhythm affect you?
So I started working at Planet during the pandemic already. So I got into it directly, like already mid-COVID. So in terms of that, it wasn't too bad. In terms of my career in general, I mean, before the pandemic, I was teaching guitar here in Ottawa. So once the school closed and we went on Zoom, and that really like kind of fucked up the whole thing. Like teaching over Zoom, especially teaching instruments over Zoom.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Oh, it sucks. It's the worst. It's
Bro.
terrible, especially teaching instruments to little kids over Zoom. That's like the worst.
That's the final boss.
Yeah.
Actually, little kids is probably not that bad. They know how to use Zoom. Like, imagine trying to explain something.
This was beginning of the pandemic, right? This was like March, so nobody actually really knew how to use Zoom yet.
Oh,
right?
okay.
But it was terrible, man. Like it was like that really was the first thing.
Oh man,
where the first time where the pandemic really like fucked up my my rhythm. And then when I went to Planet, like it wasn't too bad. But then curfew happened, like in January of this year, I guess is when it started.
Yeah.
And once that happened, it was terrible because like we were used to like, sessions until 10 p.m., sessions till 11, 12, 1, whatever. So we would like clean up and finish up at the end of the night and just kind of go home whenever, right? So like, long hours. But then as soon as curfew hit, we had to be home by 8 every night. So sessions would finish at 7:30 at the latest. So first of all, our schedule was packed. Like before, if we were busy, we'd be busy from like 9 a.m. to 1 in the morning. So we'd have a few sessions here and there. And we'd have like maybe 2 sessions in the morning, a session in the afternoon, and a few sessions in the evening. So you had like little chilling time between. By the time curfew hit, we were like having our schedule packed from 9 in the morning to 7 p.m. back to back to back to back to back to back to back.
Damn.
And then at 7 p.m. you had to do a quick cleanup, like mop up all the snowy fucking footprints off the floor and sweep and clean the bathroom. And then I took the bus, so I had to take the bus at 7:15 at the latest because the 7:45 bus was too late for me to get home at 8. And
right, but didn't you have like a pass? Like I don't know. For me, when I was working at the time during the curfew, I had a pass. Like if I got pulled over, I'm like, hey, I'm working.
So at first we didn't realize that we were an essential business. We didn't realize that we were considered essential. So we didn't think that we were eligible for that. So the way we were going about it was if we had a TV production, if we had anything big that wanted to work after 7 p.m., they were responsible for writing up the pass for us, right? Because we didn't know that we were eligible for that kind of pass. Then we figured out that actually if Dan just wrote us a pass for the curfew, then we could work until whatever time and we'd be fine. So after we realized that, this was already a few months into the curfew. So after we realized that, we were good to go. It was fine. But yeah, beginning of the curfew was rough, especially around like March. We would pack the schedule from 9 to 7 and then we'd have to like clean super fast and then jet out by 7:15. So that was stressful. Near the end of the curfew, I mean, it's funny because I feel like near the end of the curfew, nobody was really giving a fuck. Like the cops weren't really stopping anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
The cops didn't really want to give out tickets for that, and like nobody really cared anymore. So you had
it was mostly for like social gatherings.
Yeah, so like if you were just walking down the street by yourself after curfew hours, like they wouldn't really say anything. Like they would just like leave you alone. So after that, it wasn't too bad. So I feel like curfew was definitely the hardest time. But other than that, it's really just the whole stop and go thing where like they're like, okay, these are the new restrictions. Okay, no, these are the new restrictions. Or like, okay, no, now we're going back to the old restrictions. Okay, now it's going to be everything's opening up. Okay, now it's going to be vaccine passport. Okay, this, okay, that. And then the whole changing and you don't know what tomorrow is going to be.
Everything's really uncertain.
Yeah, that's the hardest thing about working during this pandemic is just not knowing, like, now I'm starting to do live sound as well, but now I don't even know like if the shows that I'm going to do in January are happening, right? Like we had one show on January 29th with Naya Ali.
Right.
And now I don't know if that show is going to happen. And then we're supposed to have 2 shows in February. I'm supposed to go see Charlotte Cardin in February 5th. I don't know if that's happening. So like just this whole like uncertainty of like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? That's the hardest part about everything.
Okay.
Right. All right. You named a couple of artists that like are down the line for you. I want to start going through our big studio projects that you've worked on at Plant Studios and what your role was like and what the session was like and just everything, your involvement in it. So let's start with Nikki Yanofsky, as I mentioned in the intro. What did you do for her exactly when she came by Plant Studios, or was it just a mix? Like, what was the context of that?
So I was assisting Dan while he was working on that session. So I assisted him on the string session, and then I started assisting him on the vocal setup. Basically, she was recording a whole jazz record, right? Start to finish. And then Dan had an emergency at his house or something. I don't remember exactly what happened, but he couldn't come in. So he was like, hey, can you take over the vocal sessions? I was like, yeah, I can do that. So I was working with her for like 3 whole days, just like 9 a.m. to whatever, 6 p.m. Once again, it was during curfew times. And man, it was that's really when I think I kind of became fast at Pro Tools, because like her and Dan have been working together for like 12 years at this point, right? So she works fast. I mean, she's been doing vocals her whole life. So she works super fast, and I was used to working with like just, you know, little rappers and stuff like that, which were super easy. You just press record and you press stop. But her, I was like doing vocal comps and like, you know, editing and copy paste and recording super fast. And, you know, she would ask me to do stuff like her vocal comps were intense, man. Like it was like, okay, I'm going to take the from this word and then the from this word and like just kind of comping it together and like doing the fades. And I had to do that crazy. Super quick, right? And because of COVID, she had her set up in the live room. So she was never coming into the control room with me, but she had a screen where she could see everything I was doing in Pro Tools, right? So she was like, yeah, take this take number 23, blah, 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 and just like copy, paste, and like comp, edit, blah, blah, blah. And we just do like crazy vocal comps like that.
Oh my God.
So that was probably the first time I worked with like a really professional artist. And like Nikki was a super sweet person too. Like it was a great time working with her, like just like nerding out on jazz music. And you know, she has an incredible voice as well. So it was a great time. It was like the like fun 3-day project that I did with her. And then and then later on I had the chance to do a piano session for that same record, where I set up the piano, recorded it, and did that all by myself. So that was cool too. So it was my first like really big kind of professional project that I worked on at Planet. Was Nikki's record.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. And then obviously the homie Corneille, you worked on some of his songs as well.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Shout out Corneille, man. What a great guy. Oh man, that was intense.
Such a nice guy.
It was intense
because
because
a great guy.
Jacob would always tell me the stories about like how working with Corneille was like intense and you have to go really fast and blah. So, but unfortunately, I never had a chance to actually see him working with Corneille. So I didn't know what the workflow was like exactly. So the first time I did a session with him was like, okay, man, I was sweating in my chair. It was, it was hard, but I did a good job, and I did a few sessions after that with him, you know, guitar, vocals. I recorded sax once for him, and I was pretty proud of that one because it sounded pretty. It was my first time actually just recording sax by myself. I kind of had an idea. I'd seen Jacob and I'd seen Dan do it a bunch of times, so I was like, okay, I'm just gonna stick a U87 and a ribbon mic in front and just call it a day and see how it sounds. And it ended up sounded pretty amazing. So I was proud of that one too. But yeah, the sessions with Corneille, man, like,
you remember which mic you used for that?
For the sax?
Yeah.
I used an 87 and a Royer 121. But yeah, I mean, working with Corneille was like working with Nikki, but on steroids, dude. It's just like you do a take, take, and then he's like, okay, we're gonna comp, set the auto tune on. And he's like, okay, let's do the from this word, and then the from this word, and then we're gonna do the da 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 da, and you end up doing like a jigsaw puzzle of fucking different takes just to kind of create the main take. So then you have to make sure your fades are good. There's no like double breaths. There's nothing weird about that. Blah, blah, blah. And then you have to do a fucking killer rough mix and make sure it sounds good. And you know, he'd been working with Jacob for like 4 years at this point, so I had to like kind of fill in those shoes, and they were like big shoes to fill, right? So like,
yeah,
you know, I feel like I did a pretty decent job. Yeah, exactly. I did a pretty decent job. I did you know, I feel like I was able to keep up with him every time, and you know, I think I recorded like 2 tracks off his record, and then I did a couple covers that he did and stuff like that. So you know, I did a bunch of sessions with him. It was always a great time too, because he's, you know, super funny guy, super sweet guy, very professional, very entertaining, amazing voice as well, you know, another killer artist.
Yeah.
So
I wanted to ask you. I'm noticing a recurring theme between Nikki and Corneille, specifically vocal comps, like taking very fragmented pieces of the audio and using that to make one master comp once you record it multiple times. Why do you think they approach it that way, and what are the advantages of doing that?
So I feel like singers who've just been doing this for a very long time just kind of get used to doing stuff like that, and it depends. Like both of these singers too are self-produced, so they don't have a producer with them being like, no, this whole take was good. Because like a lot of times I've seen like singers that have their producer with them, like their vocal producer. A lot of times the comps are going to be less intense, and as a musician you're always your own worst critic, especially singers, because it's your voice, right? So
of course
they always kind of find flaws in their sounds that not everyone can hear, and a lot of times they're the only ones. So like a lot of times the comping with them is going to be a lot more intense just because of that fact, right? Because they're like they're their own worst critic. They're like finding these flaws. They're like, oh, I don't like this take, or I like this word from this take and this word. I like the tone and blah blah blah. So they realize a lot of those things. So that's why a lot of self-produced singers do stuff like that, and because they have a lot of experience, they know you're able to do that. Because a lot of singers with less experience, like a lot of times I'm the one telling them like, hey, you only did one take, like we can do multiple takes, like there's no tape, like the tape's not going to run out, bro, like we're on Pro Tools.
We're not in that age anymore.
Exactly. So like a lot of the guys with less experience, I'm the ones. A lot of times as an engineer you end up being the producer too, because they don't have a producer.
Yeah, I've had that happen.
Yeah, exactly. You know what that's like. So like you're producing them, you're encouraging them, you're like, okay, this was the best take, we're going to choose this. But those singers that are self-produced and that like have a shit ton of experience, they're like, no, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I like this, I like this, use this, okay, blah blah blah. So they're like,
that's kind of nice. Like they know exactly what they want. Like you don't have to really make executive choices.
No, with those kind of artists, you're 100% just the engineer. Your job is just making sure everything sounds good, nothing's distorting, and choosing the right mic. Once again, with both of those artists, they'd been working with Dan for a long time, so I didn't even have to choose the mic. I was just like, I just kind of set it up as they were used to, and that was it. It was just simple. But yeah, so I feel like with artists like that have that kind of experience, they do it like that because they're used to it, right? Because they're used to just like jigsawing their vocals together and having a really good take, like a really good comp at the end, which is honestly like with the technology that we have today, it's like probably the best way to do it, just because you're getting the best out of every single take, so.
All right, let's go into Star Académie and then En Studio.
Man.
What were those projects like? They're not necessarily like solo artists, so what was that all
Star
about?
Académie was very interesting. I'm not really one to like, I don't watch Star Académie. I don't really listen to the kind of music that they do at Star Académie either, which is like really like adult contemporary Quebec pop stuff, like Marc Dupré and that kind of shit. So it was definitely an interesting project. I got to work with Toby, who's a crazy old school producer, fucking great guy. He's like a
Toby.
old school, like he's dope guy. I had a great time working with him. I mean, the project itself, like I said, I don't really watch the show, so I'm not a huge fan, but it was cool because I know it's a big thing in Quebec. It's like a famous TV show or whatnot, like similar to La Voix. So it was cool to get to play, to have a part in that. I did like, I think 6 songs, like half the record or something like that, and just vocals, just recorded vocals. It's a lot of covers, right? A lot of these kids, I did basically all the candidates that got eliminated. So these kids would come to the studio, they'd record their vocals, and I just send that out to Toby. So, it wasn't a lot of work. Once again, they had their producer with them, so I wouldn't have to do a lot of the work. I would just kind of engineer, make sure it doesn't distort, make sure it sounds good, make sure I choose the right mic, and just send that out afterwards. So, it was a cool project to work on because it was definitely something that I didn't have that much experience with, but it was just vocals. So it wasn't one of my most challenging projects. It was just like, it's cool to be able to say that I did Star Académie. It's like brownie points. It's like, okay, I did something that like,
definitely.
If someone randomly asked me like, what do you do? I can be like, oh, I'm a sound engineer. It's like, oh, what do you worked on? I'm like, oh, I worked on Star Académie. It kind of looks good on the resume.
Nice little name drop. Never heard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
And what about the En Studio with that whole
Oh, dude,
project?
En Studio, I mean, fuck, that was a great time. The TV show of En Studio was basically, it's like hosted by Marc Dupré, and they bring in, for every episode, they'd bring in like a different artist, like a kid, kind of like, I don't really know where they picked them. I mean, it wasn't really a competition. It was just like a lot of these kids like were, or like they weren't all kids. Some of them were adults, but like they had some sort of story. They grew up with their grandma, or their grandma had cancer, stuff like that, right? So like they would pick these kids who had always wanted to be musicians or had always wanted to like do music, or music was their passion for whatever reason, but they didn't have the means to go into a studio. So they'd bring them in, they'd get them to record a song that they really like by really like an artist that they admire, and they'd give them a band full of like, you know, great professional musicians, guys that just do music for a living, and basically they'd film this whole interaction while they were at the studio. And so Marc Dupré and they'd have another producer kind of produce them, and then usually Dan was doing the engineering. And so there was like, it was basically the studio turned into a TV set. It was a lot of work. I mean, I didn't do any engineering at all. It was just assisting, running coffees, running cables, setting up sessions. But, you know, fucking 14-hour days of just running around like a headless chicken and setting up, and then making sure I'm not on camera. I think Jacob ended up on camera one shot by accident. Like you can see him in the background there. I did it for a week. I think you did it for what, like 3 weeks?
Yeah, the first time they came around for a few weeks. I was there. I wasn't there for the second one, but yeah, the headless chicken reference is very true.
Oh yeah, dude, you're just running around, grabbing mics, grabbing cables, because you'll have like a full band with like upright bass, violin, and sax in the morning, and then in the afternoon you have to set up a drum kit and whatever, and you have like an hour during lunch to do the turnover, right? So like it's intense, man, and we were just like running around the whole time just doing that. So it was a great time, because the cool thing about it was like once they're rolling, you just kind of chill. So we would chill next to the coffee machine, make sure we're away from the cameras, eat their catering, and just kind of chill, you know, like it was nice. Chill once the setup was done. So like
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah. So, but yeah, En Studio was chill for that. Like,
nice.
I mean, I do like, Jacob would go.
No, they were
like
really good about it, honestly.
And I'd do like 9 to 9 or 9 to 10, whatever, depending on what was in the afternoon. So it was chill days.
Yeah, no, it was super long days.
Oh, they were super cool people.
Yeah,
it was definitely.
Long days. I had to sleep at the studio a couple of times.
Oh yeah, me too. But it was definitely like out of all the TV productions or like video production sets that I've done, like En Studio were definitely the chillest group of people.
Hell yeah.
Like out of all of them, like I don't think I met another production team that was as cool as they are.
So you've worked on like a sufficient amount of large projects. Which would you say is your favorite session you've worked on in the studio?
That's an excellent question.
And it could be the ones we talked about, or it could be ones that we haven't.
I feel like my favorite. I never engineered any of these sessions, but the Crescent sessions. So these were guys.
Yes.
The Crescent is shout out to Crescent, by the way, is a group of guys who do basically recorded shows. So back in the days, they would come in with a jazz band or a singer or an artist or whatever, and they'd live stream it. Now they do pre-recorded stuff. I don't think they live stream anymore.
Okay.
But they live stream it on YouTube. And so we'd set it up as if it was a live show. And so most of the times it was Jacob doing these sessions. He'd set it up. I'd help him set up there or whatever. But dude, those sessions were a great time, because a lot of times it was like jazz artists, right? Because the head of the Crescent, this guy, Harag, he's a jazz guitar player. So he knows a bunch of like jazz musicians in Montreal and stuff. So he'd get these jazz bands in, and dude, it was just a pleasure because it sounded awesome. And these guys were killer players. Like they would just rip everything to shreds and just have a good time. So I think like they would come like multiple times. They'd come like maybe once or twice a month to do a few sessions. So I've done my fair share of Crescent sessions as an assistant. Like I said, I never had the chance to engineer one, unfortunately. But dude, they were probably my favorite sessions that I've done out of all my time at Planet was Crescent sessions. I even did one back in October, unpaid, because Jacob was like, "Oh, we're doing a Crescent session," or maybe it was in November. I don't remember. It's like, "We're doing a Crescent session this Saturday." I'm like, "Oh, I'll just show up. I'll help you up and set up, because like I like the guys, I like the music, I like doing the setup. It's fun." So I was just like, "Yeah, I'll show up." I wasn't getting paid for it. I was just like, "I'll do it for fun," because it was a good time.
That's amazing. When you just accept doing something for fun, like that's when you know it's truly an amazing environment and great people.
Yeah, exactly. No, it was great, man. I fucking loved it.
I bet.
I love doing those sessions. They were some of my favorite to be an assistant on. I did like 3 max, I think. But just seeing a group of musicians come together, following Jacob's lead, being told, okay, Pashi's, yeah, we did a couple together, Juan. I'm pretty sure we did the question like once or twice at least.
I'm pretty sure we did, yeah, like once or twice.
Yeah, and it's just like the environment with those, specifically with the Crescent, everyone's just so nice. It's so smooth. I feel like so suave, so classy when I'm in there, because I'm just like I'm like contributing to beautiful jazz music, and I really want to give these guys a shout out. Like the Crescent Montreal, like go on YouTube, go watch those sessions, go watch those videos. They're great. They're great. We talked about it in depth in the Jacob interview as well, so go check out that as well. But yeah, absolutely. I think we talked a lot about the Planet Studios, where I think we've covered pretty much everything there. I want to step away from that now and talk about another position that you have that you're currently doing. I want to know about everything about RAC, Recording Arts Canada. How did you become a teacher there, and why did you decide to take a teaching position on top of doing freelance work? Because you're not necessarily a freelance there when you're a teacher. So why mesh the two and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I really got lucky with the recording arts position, because right as I left Planet, they were really looking for teachers. They really needed a teacher. And then Luca, a tenant from Planet, who's a really good friend of mine, and I mean, a really good friend of yours as well, Jaian.
Yeah, he'll be coming on. We'll have an episode with him too.
Nice. Shout out Luca. So Luca actually told me, he's like, look, they're looking for teachers. They had asked me, I don't want to do it, but you live right next to the place. I'm like, yeah, I do live right next to the place. It's like a 15-minute walk from my house to REC.
Nice.
So I was like, okay, I applied. I went, did the interview. They liked me. They liked the fact that I had experience at Planet and all that. So that's how I got the job. Why I decided to do it, I mean, mainly like we mentioned before, like being freelance is definitely a risk, because you don't know when you're going to get gigs or not. So I wanted something that could help me just kind of get by whenever the gigs were slow, right? And Recording Artists Canada is, I'm still doing something in audio. I'm still doing something that I like. So it's definitely still in the industry. A lot of the other teachers are also engineers, producers and stuff. So I still have making more contacts, people who live in Montreal, people who have more experience than me. So I'm still also learning from those people as well. And just because teaching has always kind of been a calling of mine, other than music. Like I mentioned earlier, I used to teach at School of Rock. I used to teach guitar. So I've always enjoyed teaching.
Going back to your roots a little.
Yeah, kind of, exactly. So, teaching is, I just like imparting knowledge. Even when I was at the studio, I would always enjoy showing the new guys how the gear works, showing the new guys the signal flow, teaching the new stuff, all that kind of shit. It was always a fun time. So I decided teaching was a cool gig to do, to kind of, pay the bills while the gigs were slow, or kind of get by and stuff. I decided to do that for that, really, just because it's a fun time, and I love just doing what I do and teaching what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And can you describe to us the importance to you and impact you feel you have on the future audio engineer generation?
Shit, I mean, hopefully not too much, poor guys. No. I mean, as a teacher, I try to just kind of impart the most knowledge that I can. Obviously, I'm not the guy with the most experience. I definitely have a few years of experience under my belt through when I was in the music industry here in Ottawa, and when I did my time at Planet, and now working as an engineer in Montreal, right? So I definitely do feel like I have some knowledge to impart, but really I just kind of want to make sure everybody who's getting into the industry knows what they're getting into, and not just in a negative way. I don't just want to scare people and be like, hey guys, working music is hard, because it's hard, but it's incredibly rewarding and incredibly fun as well. So
yeah, and if you really want it, then it doesn't even feel like work.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, yeah. So just want to make sure that all my students and all future engineers just kind of know that hey, this is a good time. This is not going to be vacation time. This is not going to be like the rappers on the music videos with thousands of dollar bills. And if you think it's going to be easy, chances are you're not going to make it. But if you push hard and if you do it enough, and it's an extremely competitive field too. There's a lot of people who want to be audio engineers. There's a lot of people who want to be rappers.
Yeah.
A lot of people who want to be singers. A lot of people who want to be producers. So
definitely,
you're not gonna wake up one morning with a $100,000 contract. It's gonna take. You're gonna have to grind. You're gonna have to whatever. So I want to make sure that whatever my students learn, whatever the future generation has takes from me is like, look, if fucking I can do it, you can do it as well. And just, fucking work hard for it, man. Like, take your time, take the energy, fucking, put the time in, and make sure you don't give up, put your nose to the grindstone and just work. And there's going to be lulls, there's going to be harder periods, there's going to be periods with like less work, less money, and then there's going to be periods where like, you're going to fucking kill it.
Is that what you say to your students verbatim? You gotta fucking work hard for it, man.
Not verbatim, but,
I'm joking.
Sometimes it slips. Sometimes it does slip, I will admit. But no, I mean, I tell my students all the time, I'm like, dude, because like a lot of them have asked me like, oh, I've thought about like, potentially going to work at Planet. I'm like, look, dude, if you really want this, you have to want it. Like, it's not gonna just be all fucking easy, and it's not gonna be 40-hour weeks. Like, you're gonna do like 90-hour weeks. I don't even know if there's 90 hours in a week, but you're still probably gonna do.
Oh yeah, there's 90 hours in a week, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so
yeah, I've done them. I definitely.
Yeah, we've done 90-hour weeks. Sure. I mean, I just
90-hour weeks feel. Yeah, I feel nice.
I just did a week at Planet. I probably did like 5 or 6 days. I don't know exactly. Like, anyways, I finished all my invoices. It was 61 hours. I'm like, holy shit! Like, that's a lot of hours. Like, I did. Yeah. I did Monday to Monday.
I feel you.
So
I did
like damn.
Yeah. It was crazy busy on my end too. Like everyone, like every director wanted to record. Like I did 130 or 120 hours in 2 weeks. I was like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
No, like because I went there to sub Ben, like the head assistant right now, who went on vacation to BC, right? So I was like subbing him, like because I was supposed to come to Gatineau. Like right now I'm in Gatineau, so I was supposed to come here to see my family on the 21st. I was like, yeah, I'll sub for like a week. I'll take on the sessions or whatever. Anyways, it's fucking busy, and I didn't even do Thursday, Friday because we had a COVID scare. So Thursday, Friday, there was nothing. Thankfully, everybody tested negative. But Thursday, Friday, I didn't do any sessions. I stayed home, and even then, so that's a total of 5 days, right? Because I did Monday to Monday. That was 61 hours. Right. I was like, fuck. Like, imagine had I done those 2 extra days, like would have been like 80 hours. So yeah, back in the days when it was stupid busy, we were doing like at least like 70-hour weeks. Like, yeah, that was good times. Yeah, it was
no, I'm sure there's moments where like it's super busy and super packed and you have like 60 to 80-hour weeks, and then there's moments where it just like dies down and it's 20 hours.
Oh yeah, some weeks you have like one session in a week.
Yeah, it comes in waves.
Oh yeah, big time. Like so yeah, that's kind of what I try to impart to all my students. I'm like, look, the music industry in general, not even if you just want to be an engineer, but if you want to be a producer, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be whatever, you're gonna have to grind. You're gonna have to take your time, and if you don't give up, eventually you're probably not gonna be famous. If I'm being real, like most people aren't gonna be famous, most people aren't gonna be millionaires, but you're probably gonna be able to make this your livelihood, and that's okay. Like that's good. That's what you're aiming for. You want to make this your livelihood. Like forget about the fucking, like I said, rappers with bitches and money. Like forget that life. That just don't aim for that. Aim for aim for that if you want to. That's good, but aim for what you want to do, and make sure that that you're enjoying what you do and making it your livelihood. But for that, you're going to have to grind. Like there's no way around it. You're going to have to grind at a certain point.
All right, let's talk about your 2 courses that you teach, specifically studio production techniques and sound design. I never knew you were a sound design guy, so I was really, really interested when you mentioned that course specifically. But like, let's just talk about what those classes are like, what people could expect if they wanted to attend REC and they had you as a teacher. Like, what do you teach exactly in those 2 courses?
So it's interesting. I'll start with sound design. I never was much of a sound design guy in general, to be honest. So you are right in that regard, but when I got hired, they told me one of the positions that I was going to need to fill was that class. So I was like, okay, it's cool. And I knew because of MIA, because of what I knew from Kevin, and because of little projects that I've done here and there, like I have done a little bit of production in the past, not very seriously, but I have done like little sound for video and stuff like that. So I do have some experience in there. So I was like, okay, I'll take this on. Like I said earlier, it's a challenge that like, I don't have that much experience in sound design, but it's a challenge that I'll take on. I'll get better at it. And, through teaching this course, my skills get better as well. So sound design, basically, we go through a lot of, at the beginning of the semester, we went through a lot of like Pro Tools basics, but then we went through a lot of how sampling works, how synthesizers works, the different type of synthesizers and how they work. We talk about audio modification, all that kind of stuff. Mainly those things. I mean, you also do a bit of sound design for video, just the basics of it. So what Foley is, sound effects, all that kind of stuff. The last few projects were that pretty much. So I definitely had to brush up on other stuff because I learned a lot of this stuff in college with Kevin. So I had to brush up on a lot of it. Thankfully, I already knew a lot of the stuff that I'm teaching, so it was.
I hope so.
It was possible for me. Yeah, for sure. It was possible for me to still teach it, thankfully, because I knew a lot of the basics, even though I don't use it in my daily work. Studio production technique is definitely something that I'm more comfortable with and that I teach a bit more easily, because it's basically just, how to mic up a drum kit, how to do technical stuff, how to mix, how to master, like the advanced stuff, advanced Pro Tools stuff. The sound design course is a second semester course. The studio production technique is a third semester course, and I teach them both in French. Because RAC is offered, you can do the program either in English or you can do the program in French in Montreal. In Toronto, you can only do it in English, obviously. So I teach both of these courses, second semester and third semester, in French, and
nice.
It's a great time, honestly. I mean, I consider myself a decent enough teacher. All of my students passed their midterm and their finals, so I think that's a good sign in terms of my teaching skills.
Do you consider yourself a tough teacher?
Not really. I mean, to a certain extent, yes. Like, we were doing the final practical with one of my groups the other day, and the guy's like, well, my Pro Tools just crashed. I'm like, did you save? He's like, no. I'm like, well, tough luck, bro. What do you want me to do? Like, if you lose a session in real life, you're gonna lose it.
That's
so
it.
Like, in that kind of stuff, I'm definitely tough. So I'm like, look, I do feel bad for you. I feel your pain, but like,
He's lucky.
What do you
was
want me to
just
do?
like, it wasn't a client. It was just
Yeah,
It was just in
exactly.
class.
That's exactly what I tell my students. I'm like,
you're gonna
look,
learn
dude,
from a mistake
if you're
that's
not-
in class.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, look, it sucks, but like, try and open one of the session file backups and see what you can do there.
work
He's
from
like, oh man, it's not my fault. Pro Tools crashed. I'm like, no, it's not your fault. But when you lose your client's files, it's also not your fault, but it's your
There's
fault.
a bigger consequence,
Right. Exactly. So like, and
A paycheck.
even if it's not your fault, it's still your fault, So
Yeah.
at a certain point, you kind of have to figure that shit out. So in that kind of aspect, I'm definitely tough. In terms of grading, I'm not that tough, because a lot of stuff it's hard, man. Like, grading a mix, like, it's hard to grade a mix because it's so subjective. Like,
It is very subjective, for sure.
so
So like you judge it based on what technique or
well, I have my evaluation grid.
Okay.
So a lot of the stuff is like if they just followed the steps correctly.
Okay.
Thankfully, I like just last week I finished grading and submitting all the grades. But yeah, I mean, you have your evaluation grid. A lot of stuff is like, did they do the right techniques? There's like Elastic Audio. Did they use the right algorithms? Did they like compress too hard? Did they blah blah blah? Like you sometimes they have to submit their sessions so I can see their sessions too. Like, did they do too many edits, too many cuts, or did they edit like what they had to, like that kind of stuff. So I'm not necessarily tough on them in terms of grading, as long as they followed all of the steps properly. Like, if they read the lab or the project and properly and they followed all the steps, then I'm not too hard on them in that regard. But in terms of like, crashes, not saving, not backing up, and late submissions,
that's a clear
like,
mistake.
If you submit late and you don't tell me about, like, some students will email me, hey, I had a really, some of my students are older, right? They have kids. Like, hey, my daughter's been sick all week. I haven't had time to work on it. Can I submit it like 3 days late? I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna fucking be an asshole and dock you grades for submitting late because your daughter was sick. But some guys, they submit like 2 days late. They don't say anything. They don't explain why.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, it's 10% per day, so you lose 30% just for submitting late. Like, I'm sorry, but like, I'm not lenient in that kind of stuff. So I'm definitely a tough professor in certain regards and not as tough in others.
You sound like a great professor. I would take one of your classes.
Thanks, dude.
I feel like we're getting a class right now. We're getting taught all the things right now.
Free lecture. Shit, do I have to pay for this?
Free lecture.
Bye.
I'll send you guys an invoice after we're done.
You're gonna send an invoice? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'll send you guys an invoice after we're done.
61-hour invoice.
Yeah, dude.
Man. Okay, so you're obviously very busy. You work. You're a teacher at Recording Arts, and you do freelance at Planet, and you recently started another job at Sovo. But before we talk about Sovo, how do you go about managing your stress of working in the audio industry and your personal life? Like, what do you?
Like I said earlier, it's a lot about like staying healthy, keeping your mental health in check. Eating properly is another big one. kind of trying not to add yourself any more stress than what you already have, because, you know, bouncing around doing sessions, you know, a lot of late night sessions where you don't sleep a lot, and teaching, grading, all that kind of stuff is like, you know, it's not necessarily stressful if you manage it properly, but you know, you definitely have a lot of pressure and a lot of stuff that you need to manage. So if you're not adding yourself on another stress on top of that, like eating poorly is going to add like a certain level of stress onto yourself, you know, not exercising, not being healthy, that kind of shit is just like, you know, it's an extra level of stuff that you're adding to yourself that is just going to make everything worse, you know. And, you know, sometimes you just can't help but like sleep little. Like sometimes you're gonna have 6-hour nights, 4-hour nights, whatever.
Yeah.
But whenever you can rest properly, taking advantage of those like full nights, you know, sleeping with no lights, no audio, like nothing around, not being on your phone until 4 a.m, which I have done and I still do sometimes. I'm not gonna pretend like I never do it. Like it's still bad habits that I have to get rid of. But, you know, trying to avoid that kind of shit and keeping yourself healthy as much as possible outside of your work is definitely the key to that. And
sometimes it's a simple
obviously
stuff.
Yeah, sometimes it's this stupidest stuff like that, and obviously not spending more money than what you're making is the big one. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the key really, is like just staying healthy, staying active, not adding yourself stress. That's really gonna go far in terms of managing your stress of personal life with the audio industry. And just having a routine, man. Like even when you're not busy,
having a routine,
having a calendar,
I like that. That's
waking up on time, you know, like having breakfast if you have breakfast. Like you don't necessarily have to have breakfast. I'm not much of a breakfast guy, but you know, having breakfast if you have breakfast, having lunch at a certain time, like keeping with an eating schedule
for sure.
You know, and giving yourself time to relax.
Yeah, man, absolutely. That's definitely super important.
Like me personally, I like to exercise. I like to play video games a lot. I'm a big fan of video games. So I try to kind of balance everything, you know, give myself hours.
There you go.
To where like, okay, these hours here I'm going to grade, these hours here I'm going to go work out, these hours here I'm going to go swimming, whatever. And then at night from like maybe 9 to midnight, I'm going to play 3 hours of video games.
For sure, that makes sense.
It relaxes me because it helps.
Just so you don't exhaust yourself, you know, just constantly thinking about audio the entire day, and you know, you're going to burn out.
Yeah, exactly that. And you know, it's a blend of everything, because like if you just wake up and start playing video games and you play for like 8 hours, that's not healthy either.
No, hell no.
Right? Which I have done. Once again, like I'm not going to pretend like I've never done it. Like when it's slow and when I'm not very busy, I have been guilty of just like being lazy and playing video games. And every once in a while, you know, on a Saturday, if it's not too busy, I'll still like just spend the whole day in my pajamas playing FIFA, because sometimes it's fun to be lazy. But it's knowing when to do it and when to stop. That's important, I think.
No, I agree with that. Okay, so we're getting close to the end here. You have a new position, your latest one as we are recording this. And so tell us more about Sovo Technologies and what you do there.
Yeah, so Sovo Technologies is it's a company that does live subtitles. So basically the company has developed an AI, an artificial intelligence, that when you speak, the AI recognizes your speech and turns it into subtitles. They use this thing to send out subtitles live to channels like CNN, TSN, MSNBC, stuff like that. And they also work with universities, colleges, stuff like that. So how it works is they'll have a sous-titreur, so a subtitler, that receives the audio of the feed of the news of whatever they're subtitling. And then they have a mic that they speak into this mic, so the AI recognizes the speech. They don't use the feed directly because the person speaking is cleaner, obviously, so it'll give more accurate results.
Right.
And so my job as a tech is to make sure that these people hear themselves properly, that the feed is coming in properly, that the subtitles are getting sent out on time, that the person's mic works, that there's no bugs in the AI, right? So this is all real time. And so my job consists of that, of making sure the audio is working, that the feed's working, that the computers are working, that the subtitles are working, that everything's just rolling properly, so the person who's doing the subtitles can just do their job with no issues. So it's a night position. Because the company's rolling 24 hours. So I do a lot of the evening news. I do a lot of the like evening lessons, like college lectures in BC and, you know, different time zones, right? So a lot of that stuff overnight.
Nice.
Okay, very cool. I have some spitfire questions for you, like rapid fire here. I'm not letting you think
Like
about
super
these,
hot
okay?
fire.
You about to spit some bars.
Super hot fire flame questions. Like man's
Oh my
gonna be
God.
hot when even if he's not hot after these questions are gonna.
All
be
right,
hot.
let's do this.
Okay, 3 favorite plugins.
Waves SSL channel, the UAD LA2A, and the Waves ARTG mastering chain.
What's your mix bus right now?
My mix bus right now, it starts with SSL compressor into the 33609 by UAD. Then on my master, I have the Shadow Hills. So that's 3 stages of compression. Then I have the mastering. So the Waves ARTG mastering, the Abbey Roads mastering. Usually after that, I'll have Pro Q, either before or after, depends on the mix. I'll have Pro Q to just kind of notch out the really annoying frequencies a little bit. And then I'll have some sort of either multiband or I'll have a de-esser to kind of, a lot of times I'll use Soothe to de-ess, just kind of control that. And then after that, I'll do my limiter. I'll do ozone at the very end just to kind of fix all that. Sometimes I'll add, before my limiter, I'll add some tape saturation. Not always. Sometimes it works. It sounds nice. The J37 by Waves is cool. And, also Oxford Inflator right before my limiter. Amazing plugin.
Okay, you have to use one reverb for the rest of your life. Which one?
UAD 480.
Okay. What is your sound card right now? Like, what's your interface?
My Apollo Twin X.
Okay, and what's your go-to microphone for a vocalist and for a guitar recording through an amp? I have to mic an amp.
I can pick any mic for anything.
Any mic?
Yeah, anything.
For vocals, I 100% Neumann U87. There's a lot of better mics. There's a lot of more expensive mics, but the 87 just works on anything. And it's clean and it works well. And it's $4,000 there. It's not a cheap mic, but it just works on everything. So any type of vocalist, if you don't know what they're going to sound like, Neumann U87. Guitar recording through an amp, SM57 all the way. Any day of the week.
Absolutely.
I'll just stick a 57 in front of there and just call it.
You can't go wrong with a 57.
Never.
It's the holy grail of mics.
Okay. Yeah, that was all the questions I had. Unless you have any other questions to ask, Anthony, you can ask the final one.
No. So Juan, usually we have like kind of a tradition here at Soundspace where we ask our guests one final question. My final question to you is, what is your advice to people who want to get into the space of sound?
Great question. My advice would be to just how can I say this? Just learn, man. Learn. You're never, like we mentioned earlier, you're never done learning. Never act like you know everything, obviously. So just learn as much as you can and listen to everybody. And then obviously when I say listen to everybody, doesn't mean pick up everything, because sometimes you'll get advice that is bad, obviously.
For sure.
Other times you'll get advice that isn't necessarily bad, but just doesn't work with what you want to do, right? Because like even with mixing, some people mix a certain way. Some people track through plugins. Some people say tracking through plugins is wrong. Some people hate plugins. They only like analog stuff. So obviously there's different types of advice. So you have to know what to give, like what to take and what to leave, but just listen and learn as much as you can, right? Like, because that'll really get far. Just like whatever advice anyone gives you, just, listen to it and decide if it works for you. Try it. Also, never be afraid to try anything, because if you don't try it, you don't know if it's going to work for you or not. So never be afraid to try anything. And just fill up your portfolio with, not portfolio. What I mean is fill up your toolbox with as much stuff as you can. That way you can be as versatile as you can. So just always learn, man.
Nice. I agree, man.
That's good. All right. So Juan, let's just say I finished this interview. I'm listening right now. I'm on the bus and I want to hear more about you and I want to find out more about you. Where can I find you? What's your social media? Where can I follow you? Just like give us all, plug away. Where can people find you?
So my social media, I have my Instagram that I mainly use. It's at the Juan you need. So if you want to follow me there, I'll gladly accept any followers. I often post, stories or posts of sessions that I'm doing or sessions that I've done, music that I've worked on, music that songs that recently released that I've worked on. So if you want to follow me there, if you want to ask anything, any advice, shoot me a message. If you want to do a session with me, if you want to book, my email is juanmgomez gomezmusic@gmail.com. It's also written in my Instagram bio. So if you don't feel like writing it down, you can send me an email there. I'm booking for sessions right now, pretty much the rest of 2022. So, I mean, I don't know when this episode's going to come out there, but yeah, just shoot me an email there if you want to book a session, if you want to ask anything, if you want or if you just want to chat, man. I'm always down to chat and nerd out about gear.
Nice.
Yeah, Juan is one of the nicest people I know, so I guarantee you it's a fun time just picking his brain about audio and just everything. So absolutely go slide in his DMs and go hit that follow button on his Instagram page.
Get a free lecture.
Thanks, guys.
Get a free lecture in the DMs.
I don't know about that.
He'll subtitle it for you.
I don't know about that.
No.
I don't know. If you want a lecture, sign up to come to RAC, bro.
Exactly.
It's not gonna be free, but it's a lecture.
Okay, Anthony. Yeah, it's a lecture. Anthony, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at akachi.audio. That's ACACI.audio. You can find me on Spotify as Akachi. And my website is in progress, so I don't know it yet, but it will be linked in the description.
Perfect. And for myself, I am at Jaian Music on social media. JaianMusic.com is my website if you want to hire me for audio services. You can also find my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jaian Music, where I podcast about anime on Anime Podcasters, which Juan was on, actually. We spoke about Attack on Titan. Yeah.
That was a fun time.
It was a great time. And And I also cover anime songs over there. You can find me on Spotify. My artist page is out there. Just go to JaianMusic.com and links to everything else. And you can also follow Soundspace on your favorite podcatcher. Subscribe to us. Everything will be linked in the description. Give us a 5-star review. And, if you want to be on the podcast, let us know. Shoot a DM to us, Anthony or myself.
Slide in the DMs, bro.
So for myself,
DMs, exactly.
Yeah, slide, bro. So for myself, Anthony, and Juan, this has been another episode of Soundspace. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, bye.